Tonight, Iran and Saudi Arabia mend ties. This is in a reconciliation brokered by China. The deal was finalized after the Iranian president's first official visit to China. And the Canadian court approves $2.8 billion to the First Nations. This is for the role of residential Indian schools in erasing Indigenous culture and identity. The settlement has been described by the federal judge as historic. And an interview with Sister Dahira Lynn Eppard on some of the most powerful women in our lives. This includes our mothers, grandmothers, and sisters, and how they can flourish under teachings of Islam.
So we had 6 articles this issue that reflected things that are important to these women in their own lives: Islamic history, the importance of motherhood, and the attention that they give to their family members.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Saamiyah Syed. Iran and Saudi Arabia have agreed to resume bilateral diplomatic ties after several days of deliberations between top security officials of the two countries in Beijing. The two Persian Gulf neighbors severed their diplomatic ties after the Saudi diplomatic mission in Tehran was attacked by an angry mob in January 2016 over the execution of a Saudi Shia cleric. The two estranged neighbors were engaged in talks since April 2021 to restore diplomatic ties brokered by Baghdad. Both Tehran and Riyadh noted progress, but the breakthrough has been elusive. The agreement to resume diplomatic ties comes a few days after the Iranian president visited China. Xi Jinping clinched a third term as China's president after being re-elected at the 14th National People's Congress on Friday. Han Zhang was elected China's vice president, while Zhao Leji was elected chairman of China's 14th National People's Congress Standing Committee. Elected as president in 2013 and 2018 and having served for 10 years, Xi has been re-elected for a 5-year term, becoming the first leader in the history of the People's Republic of China to hold the presidency for the 3rd time. In 2018, China's lawmakers passed a constitutional amendment abolishing a presidential 2-term limit that enabled Xi to rule indefinitely. A Canadian court approved a historic $2.8 billion settlement Thursday between the government and First Nations for harms done to Indigenous students at Indian Day residential schools. The funds are to be paid to plaintiffs representing 325 First Nations to compensate for the damages done by rigid rules designed to stamp out Indigenous culture, including language and heritage. Federal Court Judge Anne Marie McDonald said in her ruling that nothing can truly pay for the harm done to Indigenous students. The First Nations plaintiffs and the federal government agreed to the settlement in January, but it had to be approved by the court as well. South Africa's parliament has voted in favor of a motion that will downgrade its embassy in Israel into a liaison office following endless abuses against Palestinians, local media reports. Ahmed Mansour Sheikh Imam, the South African politician who introduced the motion, says the parliament hopes it is the first step in putting pressure on Israel to comply with human rights. He says the action should help Israel recognize the rights of Palestinian people, their right to exist, and also go back to the negotiating table. The motion was passed by 208 votes against 94. The Israeli Foreign Ministry is yet to respond to South Africa's move. Now, International Women's Day just recently passed, and in honor of this day, Muslim Home released their issue titled Celebrating the Women in Our Lives. Now, the contributors wrote about important women from the past and present, including some people that were in their own lives. Here to share more with us on this topic is Director of Religious Education at Sound Vision Foundation, Sister Dahira Lynn Eppard. Welcome, Sister Dahira, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Sister Saamiyah. It's always wonderful to be with you.
Yes, of course. Sister Dahira, this issue of Muslim Home was in honor of International Women's Day. I'm curious, how did you go about deciding which topics should be covered?
That's always a huge challenge. We have a team of about 10 amazing writers, and I like to let them lead with their own passions. And so we had 6 articles this issue that reflected things that are important to these women in their own lives: Islamic history, the importance of motherhood, and the attention that they give to their family members. And we even had a couple of our writers who are converts writing about the importance of their connection to their non-Muslim family. There's always more that we could cover, but when writers are passionate about a topic, those articles reflect that, and this issue was filled with that. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, I could definitely see that. In a day and age where there is so much information, sometimes even misinformation about religious teachings and such, how can we, from our side, help guide our children to embrace themselves and become strong Muslimas?
This is important on so many fronts. And one of our lead articles by Ahmed talked about the importance of teaching our children about strong women. And we said children in that title because it's not only important for our girls to know about that, it's important for our boys to know about that too. Strong women affect everything about their families, but they also are incredibly important to the stability of our society. A mother is the first teacher of a child. She often sets the stage for teaching about values and traditions. And so there's so much that we can do to support and encourage this kind of attention to detail in that role of mother.
Mm-hmm. And from the top of our minds, I know that many of us would point to our mothers as, the sheroes in our lives. And Muslim Home covered this by referencing the ideal mother with respect to Islamic teachings. Can you share with us what that ideal mother looks like?
This was a very comprehensive article by Sister Isla Abdul Rahim, and we want you to read that because I definitely can't cover all of it here. But some of the qualities that she referenced were that the mother was strong in her worship, dedicated to Islam, interested in being patient and persevering, fighting through hardships to practice, being resilient, also making sure that she was promoting these same kind of qualities in her children. Sister Isla identified in every instance when she identified a quality, she also identified an amazing woman from our Islamic history and the benefit that she had for her family, but also the benefit that she gave to the Ummah. So that would be a must read for everybody, inshallah, because we need to understand strong women are present in our Islamic history. Women get such a bad rap in society generally, but Muslim women particularly, because there's this notion that a Muslim woman is oppressed, that Islam doesn't give her full rights or any license to be her own person. And that is absolutely untrue. We have to first dispel these myths with their own families and raise children that understand that there are strong Muslim role models, strong women that they can learn from and apply those lessons to their daily lives.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I love, actually, International Women's Day. We get to bring up topics like this and have a thoughtful discussion on this. So, if I'm being very honest with you, Sister Dahira, the idea of an ideal mother is quite daunting. There were so many recommendations and guidelines that were provided to be an ideal mother. But how can people go about trying to engage with these guidelines without becoming too pressurized in the process? I mean, it's a strong expectation to live up to.
Right. I think that's a great question. And the first thing that we must understand is that none of us are perfect people. There are a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of women, but with support and understanding, that would mean continuing our own education, applying those lessons to our lives and making sure that there are people around us that support our growth and development, either emotionally or physically or spiritually. We can try to live up to these ideals. Now, when we falter, and we all will, there is a need for us to be patient. There's a need for us to be forgiving and humble ourselves. And so, again, we can rely on Islamic teaching and Islamic guidance for that. That's why we also focus a lot of attention on bringing about the citations from the Quran or the Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the articles we write, because anything that we're interested in informing about people about, our readers about, needs to be connected to our Islamic guidance. We have a full plan of how to be successful in our lives, and we need to rely on that.
Mm-hmm. Even if there are some stumbles along the way. Yeah, I can see that. What I think stood out most about this issue is your writer's voice. I noticed that for a lot of them, they brought in their personal stories, anecdotes. So I'm curious, what did this issue, one on International Women's Day, mean for your writers?
I think I come from a feminist background. I'm a convert myself. And so I think that the focus on International Women's Day is always a double-edged sword. It's wonderful for us to make the opportunity to talk about women and their contributions, but it's also can be destructive if we only focus upon that one day or 1 month of the year. For our writers, they are always speaking from a feminine voice when they are women. And that means that they come to their work as mothers, they come to their work as daughters, as sisters, as neighbors, as friends, as workers, and the woman's perspective in any of those areas is important every single day of the year.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we let you go just yet, Sister Dahira, I know that with Ramadan fast approaching, Sound Vision is organizing a few programs in addition to its weekly issue of Muslim Home. Can you share some information about the upcoming program that's scheduled?
Sure, we are gearing up for lots of activity during Ramadan. We have online children's classes. That's our Race for Rewards program, and that will be classes 7 days a week during Ramadan, focused on children's 4 to 7 years old in our Adams World Club, and children 8 to 12 years old in our Colors of Islam Club. Our Muslim Home newsletters are going to have more information about planning for Ramadan, and also special Ramadan reflection issues that focus on knowing Allah, increasing our worship, making sure that we keep a peaceful home during Ramadan for the benefit of all of our family members, and even fun things like book reports and recipes from around the world. So I hope that your readers will be able, or your audience will be able to take advantage of those classes, the children's programming, and also be sure to be on the lookout for future issues of Muslim Home. You can look for registration information and details about the classes at the website that will come across your screen, academy.adamsworld.org.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this with us, Sister Dahira. And as always, it's a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Saamiyah. And if I don't get a chance before then, Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak to you too. You are watching the Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. That's it from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and until next time.